Ethiopia is a giant with no door. The second most populous country in Africa, more than 130 million people, owns not a single meter of coastline. Every liter of fuel, every shipment of wheat, every container behind the products you can picture on a shelf squeezes through doorways that belong to somebody else. This sounds like trivia. It is not. Few economic bottlenecks on Earth are this dangerous, and if you want to understand how countries really win and lose, this is the place you should be looking. So how did a country this big end up locked inside its own continent? And does it really need to own a beach to breathe? It was not always like this. Until 1993, Ethiopia had a coast. Then Eritrea became independent and took the shoreline with it. And for a few years, the two neighbors shared the port of Assab like divorced parents sharing a car. But when war broke out between them in 1998, that arrangement died. Overnight. And so a nation of well over 100 million people found itself breathing through a single straw, the tiny neighboring state of Djibouti. Today, roughly 90% of everything Ethiopia buys and sells passes through that one country. Think about that. Nearly everything. One door. Think of it as a house where 130 million people live, with one borrowed door, and the neighbor holds the key. And we know what that key costs, because the receipts are public. Trucking a ton of cargo from the coast up to Addis Ababa runs about $48 to $55. Across more than 900 kilometers of highway. Multiply that by 16.5 million tons a year, add roughly $400 million in port fees, and Ethiopia's annual bill for touching the sea starts around $1.2 billion. Some estimates push it toward $1.5 billion. But here is the number that should stop you. That bill equals more than a quarter of everything Ethiopia earns from its exports. Imagine spending a quarter of your salary on the taxi that takes you to work. Every month, forever. That is Ethiopia's commute. And this is not just about money. Through that same doorway comes the country's gasoline, its diesel, its aviation fuel, and up to 800,000 tons of wheat a year, much of it food aid. When the door jams, do you think the pain stays at the port? It doesn't. It travels into bread prices, bus fares, fertilizer costs, and the dinner tables of a country where 3 out of 4 people still live in the countryside. Every delay becomes a cost, and every cost eventually lands on someone's plate. We have seen this pattern before, all over the choke point economy, and we will see it again. So what do you do when the door is expensive? Ethiopia fought back with steel. It helped build a $5 billion electrified railway to Djibouti, 753 kilometers of track designed to shrink a 50-hour truck journey to about 10 hours. A brilliant answer, on paper. And we all know how that goes. But in 2020, that railway carried less than 2 million of the corridor's roughly 20 million tons. The expensive door upgrade exists. Most of the cargo still takes the crowded old hallway. And that reveals something uncomfortable for all of us who like simple villains. Geography is only half of Ethiopia's problem. The other half is the plumbing behind the door: customs, storage, paperwork. When one inland depot fixed its yards and went digital, processing times collapsed from 60 days to 15. So some of this trap is escapable without moving a single border. Good news, but not enough. But dependence this extreme is still dangerous. When we measure this kind of concentration, economists use a simple index, and Ethiopia's score is about 0.87, close to the theoretical maximum, the kind of number you get when a patient survives through one artery. Add a second serious corridor, and that risk drops by roughly 40%. The same reason you don't keep your savings, your passport, and your spare key in one drawer. Which raises the question you have probably been shouting at the screen. Why not simply take back a coastline? Okay, you can probably feel where this is going. Here is where it gets tense. In January 2024, Ethiopia signed a memorandum with Somaliland, a breakaway region no country recognizes, to lease 20 kilometers of coast for 50 years, with a port and a military facility and possible recognition on the table. Somalia called the deal void. The African Union warned about peace in the region. For a moment, the Horn of Africa felt like a room full of gasoline waiting for a spark, and international law offered Ethiopia no shortcut. The law of the sea grants landlocked countries a right of access, the right to pass through, but not a right to anyone's territory. You are entitled to use a door. You are not entitled to take one. Harsh? Maybe, but it kept the region from burning. So was that the end of it? Not quite. Diplomacy did something quietly remarkable. In late 2024, in Ankara, Ethiopia and Somalia stepped back from the edge and agreed to pursue sea access through commercial arrangements, with Somalia's blessing instead of over its objections. And that points to the real answer, because the map offers Ethiopia exactly one alternative that costs almost nothing extra in distance: Berbera. The Somali port sits about as far from Addis Ababa as Djibouti does, and a global operator has already poured hundreds of millions into expanding it. Every other option carries a penalty. Assab is closer, but it belongs to Eritrea, where tensions are rising again. Port Sudan sits behind a civil war and has been hit by drone strikes. Kenya's southern corridor would take a $12 billion railway just to begin. So let's run the numbers like accountants instead of generals. A concession or terminal stake at an existing port might cost $500 million to $1 billion. If it cut Ethiopia's access bill by just 20%, it would pay for itself in 2 to 5 years. A sovereign mega corridor built from scratch would cost $5 to $12 billion, most of a year's national budget, and take decades to pay back if it ever did. The math is almost rude in its clarity. Buy keys, not flags. And that is the strange lesson hiding in Ethiopia's dilemma, one that applies far beyond the Horn of Africa, to our supply chains, our energy, our morning coffee. In the choke point economy we keep exploring on this channel, the countries that win are rarely the ones that plant flags on coastlines. They are the ones that quietly control terminals, contracts, and corridors, the boring paperwork of access. Ethiopia does not need to redraw a border to reach the sea. It needs 3 doors instead of 1, and its own set of keys. Because a giant with 1 borrowed door is fragile. A giant with 3 keys is a neighbor everyone has to negotiate with.